Hello people. So I'm going back to this mysticism definition / debate sort of thing that I'm talking about. In this one, I'm going to attempt to describe mysticism. This comes from a previous video. So this is kind of part 2 from this video here. And it is still a response to the same podcast that I mentioned in that other video. So here I'm going to excerpt a little bit of what Stefan said about the discussion of mysticism. And here we go.
All right, so it's pro tip and also blowing your mind time. So I put out a statement the other day. It was a very short video, like 20 seconds or whatever, saying that mysticism is a gateway to mental illness. And I was really struck by something that somebody said the other day about how one of the reasons that the church used to punish witches and astrology and Ouija boards and so on tends to exploit a particular weakness in the female mindset that leads to mental illness. So I was talking about mysticism. Now, of course, everyone knows that I grew up with a very mystical mother, and she did go crazy. And so if I put out a very short video saying mysticism is a gateway to mental illness, if you disagree with me, perfectly fine, of course. This is a debate forum. This is, great. It helped me out as a brother. See, I look for love when it comes to debates. I look for love of truth. And if somebody is a listener to me and I've made an error, I would expect them to reach out in affection and positivity and love. They don't have to, but I'm just saying in terms of getting people to listen to you, I think it's kind of important to do that.
Okay, so let's go for the loving style here. My originally planned next video was to take the framework that Stefan used to describe mysticism. So here we have, on the left is the guy that he says isn't mysticism because it has coherence and consequences, and on the right is someone that is just kind of mentally ill, and this is the one that is described as mysticism. I want to specifically criticize this analogy or this explanation, this framework, in the next video. But I wanted to come at it first from a lighter place. Now, the thing with skeptics, the thing with people that are anti-astrology or whatever it is, do tend to be very dismissive and not particularly open to thinking about these things, and that is why my initial thought would be to just plow into his argument. The point I made in the last video is that the criticism I have of atheism and skeptics and stuff like that isn't usually their criticisms. Like, there is a lot that can be criticized about Christianity, but it's the fact that they cast their own position as well thought out, well reasoned, well done scientifically, when I don't credit them with an argument of that strength. And I think this can be proven. I think a lot of the times with skeptics and atheists, this kind of thing, they will come at you with a criticism. They'll say, oh, well, if God exists, then why blah, blah, blah. But then their position is so bad that you can just openly attack their position and bring it down. And they're usually not ready for that. They usually seem to just assume they're right. It's kind of annoying. So yeah, I wanted to go straight into arguing against Stefan's position because I expect that kind of attitude here. He has, in other podcasts, just casually mentioned how astrology is, all made up and all that kind of thing. He didn't precisely say that. He said something like it's a luxury belief, and it's something that women attach to a lot, and it's just casually acknowledged in his narrative but not directly stated that it is completely made up and delusional. So first I will go into my definition of mysticism, and while I'm not going to overly critique his definition, I believe mine is better. and I will point out why I think mine is better. So my definition of mysticism is the belief in another world beyond ours, another dimension, another place. It doesn't have to be another location. It is often in mystical ideas something that is already with us that we just can't see. But mysticism is the belief there is this other dimension that can feed information through to us. And that's all it really is. Now, there is way more complexity to this, because obviously some people are saying this information is always right, and some people are not saying that, but that is its core. With channeling, for instance, the idea is that there's this other dimension where other entities reside and telepathically contact us to give us what is usually positive information, because why would you channel if you didn't think the entity was positive? With astrology, it's the idea that the planets have influenced us. This happens on a kind of other dimensional level, but also that there is this idea, I think, that some positive spirits or something originally told us this information. We just didn't just jump out the womb knowing it. This came from ancient cultures because they were told by extraterrestrials or spirits that this is how the world works. With Ouija boards, it's pretty obvious there. There is one difference in this, in that with Ouija boards, with a great deal of mediumship and stuff like that, the idea that the spirit is always positive, the force on the other side of that is always positive, is not assumed to always be true. Like sometimes it could be that there is a negative haunting or something like that. And also, not to be forgotten here, this is Christianity's view. I think that Christianity has become very, very mystical. And I think Christians hate the idea of astrology or anything else like that gaining any power or any authority, because they're in competition with it. They want the same sort of open-minded followers that would consider astrology to go to their cult, it often seems, having been around them. Christianity now has absolutely bizarre beliefs. It has things like cord cutting, which is one of the more fruity, crazy New Age ideas. A lot of the cliches and quotes it comes out with are very New Age spirituality. It's all about having this contact with another force, which is also very New Age. It's not so much about duty and such like that anymore. Repentance and stuff is a non-mystical thing, mostly. You repent, you are guilty because of real life events, and these emotions, even though we don't see them, they do exist in the real world. They change behaviors. But you get a lot of people saying in Christianity things like, oh, I was doing XYZ and then God told me XYZ and then I changed my behavior and such and such. And an example of this is women will often say, God told me I had to settle down with this guy. And that just seems a bit off to me. And it's very much like God told me I was forgiven, and so you have to then see me as a clean person. That is absolutely pure mysticism. That is an entity from another dimension, another world, a place we can't see, God who exists within everything and is unbelievably telepathically powerful and all that kind of stuff, is telling me this thing, and this thing is so powerful and important and holds so much authority. Authority is a relevant word here. The idea is this other dimension holds authority a lot. But this God holds so much authority that not only do I now know that, but you have to know it too. That's a lot of modern day Christianity. But here, with this definition, I think is correct, we run into a problem. And the problem that I think would annoy someone like objectivist Stefan, and would annoy a lot of people that are more worldly wise, grounded, such like that, is that these ideas are quite hard to test. These very subjective things are brought from whatever dimension they are, even if it's the person's own delusion, and they really remain subjective in a lot of cases, and they can only really be tested on a more subjective framework. This is where I think Stefan's idea of coherence and consequences come in. But testing a subjective framework isn't the same as defining that framework. Coherence and consequences tests the thing. It doesn't define what the thing is. In the same way, we wouldn't define whether a government program is a government program by its results, by its consequences. We wouldn't say this particular program, like perhaps a Sure Start program in England, which actually did have very good measurable results, that's a government program because that has good consequences. Whereas this other thing over here that killed a load of people, it's not a government program because its consequences are not good and we don't like them. I mean, that's just not right. That's obviously not right. And it's very similar with his definition of mysticism. There is a real problem with this as well, and there is a dangerous problem. Like, we're playing around in ideas here, and as I originally got from Stefan, people's ideas are one of the most important things. So many people died under communism, which was just an idea. Ideas are incredibly powerful. And so if you're playing with this bomb of power, then obviously you sometimes want to achieve certain results. The real danger of mysticism is that this other world holds power. When the channeler speaks, they have power, and it is assumed to have come from a positive place. If we are to assume the thing on the other side of this dimension, the thing communicating with us, is positive, does have authority, is unseen, and in a lot of objective terms unprovable, then that position of authority, of speaking and being assumed to be correct without needing proof, is incredibly dangerous. It's an unbelievable temptation. It's what people want. It's what every narcissist in the world wants. It's, I speak the truth from my will and you all have to do what I say. It is modern Christianity. So let's work this through logically. Say there was another dimension. Say there was information coming through. There are three possibilities here. The first possibility is that it's a genuinely good entity that wants nothing for the best of us. It's an angel, a positive entity. The second possibility is that it is some entity pretending to be that angelic entity, which is most likely a demon from just the background information of life that we understand. Because it's not going to be another positive entity that's going to be lying like that. The third possibility is it's the person's own delusional ideas or fraudulent ideas coming in and saying that they are this other dimensional authority for their own gain. And that is where the issue is. That's where a lot of people want to shut the whole conversation down. If you ascribe positive authority to another dimension, then you're going to get a lot of these either negative, like say the Heaven's Gate group, or delusional people coming in and creating all sorts of incredible damage. So in the next video, what I plan to do is I plan to say how I would subjectively challenge some of these things, being someone that knows about this area. I'm going to bring out the human design chart. I'm going to show how the different I Chings relate to the chart and how it's all very logical that it works like that, and how just insights came along later that justified earlier things, and all of that. I'm going to say how someone with a bit of an understanding of this area would challenge some of these things, what the conversations in this space might be like. And eventually I hope to circle back to the idea that Stefan gave originally that started off this conversation. The gateway to mental illness is mysticism, or something like that. And after having defined mysticism, after having said what are its good and its bad points, what are the risks, what are the benefits, and perhaps comparing it to some other things in the real world, such as QAnon is a very similar cognitive thing, but it's not based in another dimension. So QAnon is this idea that these military people in this other place are dropping us hints and clues and stuff like that. So that's a good thing to compare it to. Like, we have a better idea of how this kind of thing might affect mental health. Yep, so that's my plan with this. And thank you for listening.